Ron DeSantis may not even win New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is a state that if you're an up-and-coming candidate, you have to at least be sure that you have New Hampshire in the bag, okay? It's a population of 1.2 million people, and they're not quite like any other voter group in the country. There's a joke that New Hampshire voters would be undecided about a candidate because they've only met him 3 times at this point. So New Hampshire is a very, very important state for any potentially insurgent candidate to win. And it has a very small population. It's very small geographically. It's easy to go from town to town to town. It's easy to advertise, and people are very tuned in to the news, and it's easy to present your message, whatever message that you want. And as long as you're campaigning well, the voters can be convinced to your side. You look at the 2016 primary, in which Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire by 25 points. Okay, crushed Hillary with all of her establishment money and all of her establishment media propping up. Bernie won by 25 points and still ultimately ended up losing the Democratic nomination to Hillary Clinton. So let's look at this article here about Ron DeSantis' fortunes in New Hampshire. From Politico, it says, "It's just stupid. DeSantis stumbles in New Hampshire. It once looked like Ron DeSantis..." Oh, God, I got hair in my eye or something. "It once looked like Ron DeSantis might be poised for a breakthrough in New Hampshire. Not anymore. For several months this year, Ron DeSantis seemed poised for a breakthrough in New Hampshire. Longtime allies of his chief opponent, Donald Trump, were shopping around for alternatives. Multiple efforts sprang up to draft DeSantis into the race. The Florida governor topped Trump in one New Hampshire poll in January, and he sold out the state's biggest annual fundraising dinner in April, helping the party bring in a record haul." So DeSantis is winning in polls in just January. But in the months since DeSantis formally entered the presidential race, he stumbled in the first in the nation primary state. He got dragged into a tit-for-tat endorsement battle with Trump that generated some media attention but little measurable increase in support. His first visit to the state as a presidential candidate drew more headlines for what he didn't do, take questions from voters, than the retail politicking he did. And that's on top of polls that had already swung back in Trump's favor. There are signs that even inside DeSantis' orbit, they see New Hampshire as a challenge. The super PAC that's effectively running his operation has been off the air in New Hampshire since May. Temporarily, its founder told Politico, while running a new ad in Iowa and South Carolina this week. And DeSantis' visit to the state on Tuesday is being met with backlash from a major Republican women's group. The New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women released a statement Thursday slamming DeSantis for planning an event at the same time as their annual fundraising launch, an event Trump is headlining. The group asked him to reschedule. "It has always been a New Hampshire hallmark to be considerate when scheduling events," the group's events director, Christine Peters, said in a statement. "To have a candidate come in and distract from the most special event the women's group holds in the year is unprecedented." DeSantis' world was quick to dismiss the group's complaints, saying their event shouldn't be a distraction since it's in a different part of the state and at a different time than when Trump is speaking. And the Federation's soiree is already sold out. They noted that the 2 of the group's members resigned over the statement targeting DeSantis, with the PAC blasting out their tweets. One of them, Kate Day, the now former public relations chair, told Politico the Federation erred when it broke its neutrality in criticizing DeSantis. But DeSantis' opponents were already weaponizing the exchange. If there's one thing you don't do in New Hampshire, it's piss off the grassroots women, said an advisor to a rival candidate granted anonymity to speak freely. I can never say that word. You guys might know if you've been watching my videos for a while. Don't mess with them. They remember everything. Rookie move. Out of the 4 early voting states, libertarian-leaning New Hampshire was never the most logical fit for the conservative, culture war-wielding Florida governor. He tactically acknowledged as much by removing any reference to the 6-week abortion ban he signed in Florida from his stump speeches in the state, where the majority of voters identify as pro-choice. But as a leading contender against Trump nationally, expectations for DeSantis remain sky high, even in New Hampshire. And some Republicans in the state were dumbfounded that DeSantis would walk into a skirmish with a prominent GOP group. It's the worst strategic move he has exhibited thus far, New Hampshire-based Republican strategist Mike Dehaney said. It's just stupid, actually. You don't take on the New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women. He added, if he doesn't turn this around, it could be a death by 1,000 cuts. DeSantis' stumbles may say as much about Trump's strength in New Hampshire as they do about the governor's own shortcomings. The state handed Trump his first primary win in 2016. And Trump and DeSantis are on a collision course Tuesday, where they have near dueling events in New Hampshire. DeSantis is set to stump in Hollins just 2 hours before Trump is expected to address the women's group in Concord. One problem for DeSantis in New Hampshire is that his culture war platform has more natural appeal in Iowa, which has a history of nominating the most socially conservative candidates, and South Carolina. His team also has its eyes on Nevada, where he recently headlined an annual event alongside one of his top supporters and personal friends, former state attorney general Adam Laxalt. Another issue for DeSantis in the Granite State, the anti-Trump lane is crowded here. Former New Jersey governor Chris Christie, who has a built-in base of support from the state from his 2016 bid, plans to run a New Hampshire-focused campaign and is starting to nip at DeSantis' heels, having climbed to 3rd place in one survey. On the flip side, the Trump-aligned super PAC MAGA Inc. is flooding the airwaves and voters' mailboxes with attacks on DeSantis, and Trump had a long head start on organizing in the state, staffing up early with the hiring of former New Hampshire GOP chair Steve Stepaniak in January. The former president's team had already identified 192,000 people in New Hampshire who had donated or signed up online saying they would do something with the campaign or attended his rallies over the last 6 months. Right now, Trump's the guy to beat in New Hampshire, and that's just a fact. DeSantis' campaign is showing some signs of recalibrating. The governor took questions from voters at an event in South Carolina this past week, yada, yada, yada. Still, New Hampshire is a hard state to predict. Independent voters who can pull ballots in either party's primary in New Hampshire and who typically skew more moderate could be major players in the Republican contest without a serious fight to draw them to the Democratic side. The state's popular Republican governor, Chris Sununu, is a wild card whose eventual endorsement could help or hurt DeSantis. Okay, so you got DeSantis feuding with this women group who has a lot of political strength in New Hampshire and also has a lot of political will, and they're a very prominent group, and DeSantis has decided to go head-to-head with them and not abide by their wishes. And you combine that with the fact that you have all these candidates, right, that are clogging up the anti-Trump lane. So people who are sick and tired of Trump and are over it and want somebody else to be the GOP nominee. Well, you got your pick of Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, you got Tim Scott, you got Chris Sununu, who was mentioned. All these candidates are sucking up the air out of the room for DeSantis. Now, if it was just DeSantis versus Trump, you might have a race that is closer because the anti-Trump lane isn't so crowded, and the support would all of the anti-Trump support would be funneled towards DeSantis. But what we're seeing is that that's not necessarily happening, and the GOP, being the selfish, self-absorbed people that they are seeking to enrich themselves and enrich their own political future over consolidating support behind DeSantis as a way to combat Donald Trump. So until we see some more people drop out, until we see DeSantis's messaging change and him take a less culture war driven approach to his campaigning, it's not going to work for him generally. And as the article pointed out, in New Hampshire, it's even going to hurt him even more, okay, than it does in other places in the country. So yeah, it's like if DeSantis is not able to pick up Iowa, if he's not able to pick up a New Hampshire, if he's not able to pick up a Nevada, this thing could be over pretty dang quickly, okay? And we could be looking at a scenario where Donald Trump runs uncontested in many of the later states, because DeSantis, if he doesn't pick up, I think not picking up New Hampshire would be a death blow. Not picking up Nevada would be a death blow. That could be too hard for him to overcome just based on the dynamics of the race.